There's been much request for me to do a reading based on the disappearance of William Tyrrell. Firstly, I'm going to tell you what was drawn. I put this into sections of my questions towards tarot and spirit. And I started with wanting to know the events leading to the disappearance of William and any person or persons causing that disappearance. So the cards that I drew were the Page of Cups, which obviously would represent the child, William, the Two of Pentacles, the Strength, the Empress, Six of Swords, Wheel of Fortune, Moon, Nine of Swords, the Hermit, the Star, and the King of Pentacles. Then I asked to describe where they will be found, if at all, and describe the location and what they would uncover. Once again, I got the Page of Cups, the Emperor, the Eight of Cups, the Magician, the Empress, the Justice, and the Hermit. Finally, I put to the cards, now I want to get an estimate of timing, when this will happen for the last part, based on if he would ever be found. And of course, just going on an estimate here, I got the Page of Swords, the Sun, the World, the Ten of Pentacles, and the Ten of Cups. So this is what I'm going to interpret from based on that. So the days before William vanished, what I picked up, of course, William wasn't a quiet child. He had a presence, the kind that seemed to fill a room without any effort. Adults certainly noticed him, and it was very easy for him to be remembered. Even if he went to like preschool or something like that, he was in your face, but he wasn't a bad child. He had confidence about him, even though he was so young. And he had a warmth and an unusual emotional awareness for someone so young. So he was protective of others as well, often stepping in when someone was being overlooked. So he may have been, and I don't know if this is fact, but this is what I was getting from the cards, that he seemed to always like step in, like he included people. He liked people to join in. So I wouldn't be surprised if when it came to like with his sister, he was always including her with what, like for example, the drawing and stuff like that. So it was like, and what about, so to speak, you know? But anyway, behind that brightness was also pressure, which is what I picked up from the actual cards, and also doing some remote viewing. So I feel that William lived in a situation where expectations were heavy and words were sharp, and there were rules that didn't make sense to him. But I got this feeling like silence felt like punishment also. So if he was ignored, he would have felt that was punishment. And there were moments where he was made to feel trapped without even being touched. He learned early to hold his tongue as well. So to think before speaking, to watch adults carefully. So I feel like he was very wary. You know, like he knew his boundaries. He knew what a look from somebody was telling him to a certain degree. Now, in the weeks leading up to his disappearance is what I wanted to actually focus on here. And something shifted. So what I was picking up is that he began to ask questions, possibly difficult ones, possibly asking like where his mother was or like his real parents. or his siblings, like his other siblings. He seemed to speak, from what I was getting, about things that didn't sit right. He seemed to want clarity. He wanted truth. Even in his innocence, he wanted to know things. And maybe he was pestering people with questions about other things as well. But once that spark ignited, it just didn't go out. So he was just very inquisitive. And I picked up there was a moment, it seemed to be small but significant here, because it was like where a decision is made around him, like not for him. So the change in movement, the sudden trip. So this could have been the trip going to the grandparent, the grandmother's place. And it's like he wasn't prepared. He was sort of like, this was sprung on, so to speak. And the reason that sounded rehearsed was like it was prepared. It was something that was obviously organised. Now, I'm not saying that this disappearance of William was planned, but William sensed it. Children always sense that something is changing, something's different. Now we get to the day he vanished. There was urgency that came through. I get motion, and I saw what looked like a push to get somewhere quickly. I also sensed words exchanged that were very clipped and tense, and William didn't feel safe, but he actually felt determined. He seemed to have within him a belief that he could just speak or just tell someone what he knew and things would change. That was the last time he was seen. So he may have started to spill beans about things that he also wasn't meant to say. But I'm not saying that's what happened, like as in that's why he was disappeared, like why he vanished. Because I then got visions of being in the driveway, sitting in the driveway. And this was weird because I actually had the same thing that was coming to me years ago. And I stated that. I saw him sitting in the driveway, playing with a few cars, sitting behind the vehicle. He wasn't in front of the vehicle, he was behind the vehicle. So the way that it was coming through in my image was being behind the vehicle. But in this particular vision, I was seeing the vehicle forward in the driveway, and it's a dirt driveway. So I'm not sure whether there's been like some paving going on over the top of this driveway that was there previously. And it feels like it's split in two different places, this home. I don't know. I've never been out there. I don't know what the house looks like, but I saw what looked like two driveways for some reason. Anyway, he's sitting in front of the car in this particular vision. The female comes out yelling, screaming. These are the short, tense words, very clipped, angry over the phone, yelling something to do with, like you should be here, or we're supposed to be, spending time as a family, or blah, blah, blah. You're never around, yada, yada, yada. And then I see her jump in the car. She didn't check in front of the car or behind the car or anything like that. And it looked to me like she hit reverse in my first vision years ago. This actually showed me going forward, like jumping forward in the car. At that point, it was then as she was moving back, she saw William lying in the driveway. Now, there was no blood, so there was no break in the skin or anything like that, but he was knocked down. Obviously, the bumper had hit the side of his head, causing him to fall forward. And, of course, the panic bells went in. I feel that if they had looked for saliva in that driveway, they would have found it. Not blood. They would have picked up saliva. I don't know whether those lights or that stuff that they spray could actually pick up saliva, or maybe it was just more like they were looking for blood. There was no break in the skin. Now, then with these cards, what actually happened? The first thing that came through with those cards is like people involved and not strangers. They were caregivers, adults who were meant to protect but instead were overwhelmed, distracted, and managing more than one truth at the same time. There was some kind of emotional immaturity also at play, poor judgment, a sense of juggling too many responsibilities without control. And William also became a bit of a problem, not because of what he did, but because of also what he knew. And then I was getting the panic, a belief that things could be fixed if they just kept moving forward. No single moment of like intentional cruelty, but there was a series of careless choices layered on top of one another. And one decision obviously leading to another, then another. A move was made to take William away from that familiar place where he was. Water nearby, not directly involved, but close enough to matter. And I got a lot of emotions running high, confusion taking over. So something went wrong, obviously. So what followed, I sensed, was fear, this deep consuming fear, the kind that keeps people awake at night, the kind that convinces them silence is safer than truth. So from that point on, the adults involved separated themselves emotionally. They withdrew, they avoided, they carried the weight alone publicly. They appear composed privately and unravelled. Now, years passed, the guilt never left. Now we come to that final part where William would be found, if at all. So if William's remains were ever discovered, it would not be by accident. The location is controlled land, a place shaped by authority, structured, managed. It's not wild and it's not busy either. Somewhere with history, somewhere people assume has already been searched. There is a sense of abandonment there, a place people pass but they don't linger around. The land itself feels quiet, as though it's been holding its breath. I know that's a weird way to put it, but that's how it was coming to me. And what will be uncovered would not be scattered. It will be contained, placed with intention, even if done poorly. There are signs of someone trying to make things right after the fact, not to hide completely, but to distance themselves from what happened. Now, the truth would come through human intervention, not nature. I see paperwork, a decision, a re-examination, and someone finally asking the right question. So when does the truth come out? Well, obviously it can't be rushed. It begins with information resurfacing. A conversation, a document, or a comment that doesn't align with the official story. I'm getting light beginning to shine where there was once confusion. So this is like everything being pulled into the light with that justice card that I saw. And this leads to closure, not just legally, but emotionally. So it's a full circle moment. I see families involved finally understand what happened and why it was allowed to go unresolved for so long. Now, when it happens, it's going to bring peace rather than chaos, which is, I know people are going to be up in arms and everything, but the truth doesn't explode, it's going to settle. And when William's story is finally complete, it's going to bring a sense of unity, healing, and acknowledgement that he mattered. And he does matter. Even now he matters. But that he was seen, that he was never forgotten. So I didn't get an exact timing because of the fact that I keep getting a feeling they're never really going to find his remains. But I also, interesting enough, when I did a spirit box session, when I asked where he was, they said he was in a suit bag. Now, a suit bag, first of all, I'm thinking, is this a suitcase? And the way the suit bag was shown to me in a vision 2 years later after that event was not a suit bag, but it looked like one of those bags that they put a sleeping bag in with the pull cord. So I feel that he is in either one of these or, as he described, a, a suit bag. He's contained in a bag regardless. So this will be very interesting to see if what the cards and my remote viewing has actually connected with. I do recall calling the police when I had this strong vision of William, and he showed me at that point about being in the driveway and about her and her partner, the foster parents arguing and yelling at one another. And when I spoke to the police, I said, look, I don't know whether this is helping. I don't want to hinder anything, but I feel that I need to share with you what I have picked up, what I've seen. The officer that spoke to me over the phone was very polite. He wasn't judging me or being critical or, like most of them are, especially the ones in charge of investigating. But he was saying to me that what I said actually was mentioned in the meeting. Now, whether I was just picking up on what was mentioned in the meeting, I don't know. But there seemed to be some kind of tension between the foster parents. Something was a bit off. It wasn't as lovey-dovey or as special a bond as what they're making it out to be. And I still believe that. I still believe that there was some issues going on between the foster parents, the frustration of sorts. So it could be that William was getting to be a little bit of a handful that day, and that as a result is why she was flustered and annoyed that the foster father wasn't there spending time with the family. I do recall hearing the words, work is more important, or something to that effect. So that's what I got from today's reading and what came through before. So I hope this helps.
The High Priestess.